Hello, I'm Oscar Maciel, and welcome to the show. Today we're here to discuss the Golden Gate Bridge, not as the iconic symbol of San Francisco, but as one of the world's top locations for suicide. My guest today is David Hull, the president and co-founder of the Bridge Rail Foundation. The foundation focuses on preventing future tragedies using a simple solution. David, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate you coming.
Happy to be here.
Well, thank you. And basically, before we get into what the Bridge Rail Foundation is, why is this subject important to you and to the others who work for the Bridge Rail Foundation?
Well, it's important to me primarily, initially, because we lost our daughter to the Golden Gate Bridge in 2003. And I didn't want to be one of those people who had gone before, parents who'd gone before and not done anything to try to change that situation. It's important to others on the board, for instance, and I've been happy to say this for years now, not because they're personally involved with a suicide, have a personal loss, but because they're regular citizens who realize that this is a preventable tragedy that's ongoing, and it needs to be stopped, and it can be stopped effectively.
Right. And so the Bridge Rail Foundation's way to stop it is exactly what?
Yeah, the Bridge Rail Foundation was established with one purpose, and we've kept very carefully to that single purpose, which is to see a suicide deterrent system on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like a simple enough solution, but this has been happening since the bridge opened in 1937. In fact, I read on your website that the original designer, Joseph Strauss, that he designed the bridge with a deterrent in place, but the architect changed it. I mean, so this has been happening for a long time. And why exactly do you think that nothing has been done about this for so long?
Well, it's a multifaceted problem, of course. One element of it is that until recently, what I call the old understanding of suicide has held sway in the public mind and even in the mental health community. The old understanding of suicide is that if you're suicidal, you're going to find a way. Mm-hmm. The new understanding of suicide, based on 40 years of empirical evidence around the world, is that, in fact, most suicides are preventable, and most of 90% of those prevented from taking their lives do not subsequently kill themselves. Mm-hmm. And so the understanding of suicide and suicide prevention has shifted from a hopeless situation to one in which there's a great deal of hope.
Right.
So that's one element. The other element has to do with the Bridge District. For 70 plus years, they ignored the suicides on their bridge, while every other suicide destination in the world relating to jumps mm-hmm. Has taken measures and reduced their suicide rate to zero or near zero. The Golden Gate Bridge has, until 2008, steadfastly ignored, denied, misdirected attention to suicides, and just wouldn't respond to any of the 7 preceding volunteer efforts to get a suicide deterrent system on that bridge. Mm-hmm. In 2008, they historically, I was in the room, I've never felt such a palpable sense of history. They voted to approve construction of a suicide deterrent system, provided that the funds were found from outside their budget.
Welcome back to the show. My guest is David Hull from the Bridge Rail Foundation. David, we were talking before the break about what has been going on as far as trying to get a suicide prevention system in place. What is the Bridge Rail Foundation, what is their main goal? What are they doing to prevent that?
Well, our strategy consists of educating, basically. We educate the public and we educate the decision makers. The decision makers are critical, of course, because they make the decisions, but they, as public officials, have to have a certain amount of public cover. And so we seek also to educate the public. And the primary means that we do that is through shoes exhibits. We, a number of years ago, mounted our first shoes exhibit, which was 1,600 pairs, that number to represent the official number of those known to die by suicide at the Golden Gate Bridge. Not the whole number, because there's a whole number of unofficial suicides. And in the years since, we've had a number of shoes exhibits ranging from, again, another 1,600 pair at the 75th anniversary of the bridge.
I read that on your website, and also, but I also read that there is a fundraising effort going on to pay for a suicide prevention system to be built. How is the foundation involved in that?
Well, we've been active. The funding has to come from government because it's a safety issue on a public bridge, a public highway. And the difficulty has always been that the Golden Gate Bridge is a separate, independent transportation district. It's not part of Caltrans. And as such, in order for them to get federal money, for instance, there has to be separate legislation, or there had to be separate legislation. And this is until a year and a half ago, when the Federal Highway Reauthorization Bill was redone, and which made federal funds available for things such as suicide barriers and nets on bridges, and also authorized the Golden Gate Bridge to apply for those without having to have separate legislation. And we've been active in that effort as well.
Great. Well, what happens after it's built? First off, what happens with the Bridge Rail Foundation? What is their next step after they've accomplished the goal of getting a prevention system in place?
Well, what I would like to see is that we monitor it for at least a year to make sure that it's effective. And the evidence is that it is effective, because there were nets put up in Switzerland 10 years ago and have been entirely successful. Beyond that, our stated purpose is to disband. It's not impossible. We've also had an impact and assisted other suicide bridge problems around the country just by telling them what we've learned and so on. And so it's not impossible that some people on the board might decide to redefine its mission and become a bridge rail foundation addressing the suicide bridges across the country.
If you could very briefly, what would it mean for you to achieve your goal?
Well, in the first place, as I said, one of my first responses on the night my daughter died was, why hasn't anybody done anything about this before? And then subsequently I realized it took me 18 months before I made any kind of a public statement. It took, and then I subsequently realized that I couldn't be a part of those people who'd gone before and not done anything for those parents who come after. And so it will be it will make a terrible and unnecessary wrong right. And it doesn't bring my daughter back, but it's a good thing, and I will feel very good about it.
David, thank you again for sharing that with us, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. Again, if you need more information, contact bridgerail.org. Thank you for joining us.